The reason for the ever-expanding lexicon of words that you can't say, which are often more accurate and were created by these ethnic groups themselves, is because they want to be able to label more people racist, homophobic, sexist, bigoted. Here are 5 racist terms that you think are racist terms. Now, before I get to them, I want to know, what's the word that's now considered racist that you consider to be the most silly? Which are the terms that we're going to cover, which were once correct, by the way, and not offensive at all, now considered offensive? Which one of these do you think is the most absurd example? Comment. I'd like to hear some feedback from you. Now, before we get into the 5, there are obviously some terms that were designed at inception to be racist, and in the context of good taste, probably shouldn't be used.
There are white n***s. I've seen a lot of white in my time.
Repeated it in the negative context.
Double down.
One plane goes down, he's president when Barack Obama's there. 4th in line, pro temporum. Look it up. So let's go to the first one here. I think American Indian, and there's a subset here. So American Indian is where we start off, and then we get to Native and Aboriginal. But some activist groups, they still say, for example, that American Indian is racist. But it was actually created, by the way, by Native Americans, as you know them, First Nations people. They were the ones. According to 1995, too, the U.S. Census, in the U.S. Census Bureau, 50% of American Indians preferred the term American Indian. Only 37 preferred Native American.
Yeah, remember, at one point, English meant nothing to them.
Right.
It's true.
Exactly. We're supposed to think this is racist. But this also includes Aboriginal, Indigenous is under this category. This really comes down to who you ask, okay? No one seems to actually agree. And even to the point where now, when I was in school, we learned Aboriginals. And in Quebec, we mainly had the Iroquois and the Algonquins. But now Native American is considered offensive.
What's needed is nothing less than a total renewal of the relationship between Canada and First Nations peoples.
Well, we do have to let people from other voices on this platform. So now we return to the world's silliest country's world's silliest prime minister to explain what term should be used. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
And as Prime Minister of Canada, we'd like to officially apologize to our Aboriginal people. I'm sorry, to our Native American population. Again, I apologize to our First Nation citizens of this country. We can't say First Nation?
Eskimo goes underneath there too, by the way. That's considered a racial slur. And the reason, here's one thing that's interesting, that Eskimo is considered a racial slur. And even the original reasoning, I don't think is that offensive. People, they claim the term meant eater of raw meat. That was a big thing. I think everyone in the pitch room thought that this morning.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Sushi, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and then some people thought it, well, even if it's beef at that point, just tartar. Yeah. But some people thought it came from the Latin word excommunicate, meaning the excommunicated ones because they live up in no man's land and the native people weren't Christian. But the reality is it meant someone who made snowshoes.
It's practical.
Yeah. So many Native Alaskans, by the way, still refer to themselves as Eskimos. You know why? Because the word Inuit isn't a part of the Yupik languages. It's not even a part of their language. We've created a term to be less offensive to them that doesn't exist in their language. The original term, one who makes snowshoes. Do you know how many Native American tribes, Indian American tribes, you know how they name themselves? By what they did. That's one who makes teepees and one who takes massive That's what they did. So we said, oh, well, these people up there, the ones who make snowshoes. Oh, we call that Eskimo. Works for me. Next, racist terms that aren't. Oriental. So in 2016, Obama outlawed the usage of the term Oriental in federal law because it was considered racist. Here's the thing, the term is not at all inherently racist. It's an adjective that just means of or pertaining to East Asia.
I love their trading company.
And it's still, yes, exactly, it's still used that way by many people.
Indian.
By the way, it's a much more accurate term than Asian. That specifically encompasses the Orient, right? When people say it, they mean East Asia, whereas nowadays, when people say Asian and you're talking, you say, well, is he Asian? Well, Indian Russian,
Middle Eastern.
parts of,
somewhere.
Come on, you know what I mean. No, he's not Chinese, Japanese, Okinawan, or any variation thereof. Oh, okay, so he's probably in, yes.
Hat one.
Oriental is not a racist term at all. The crusade against the term actually can probably be linked to Edward Said's book, Orientalism, in which he linked them to like prejudice, sort of outsider examples of the Oriental world based on this. That's where it really comes from, right? So writing for the LA Times, actually, Jane Tuchiyama wrote, literally it means of the Orient or the East as opposed to of the Occident or of the West. Last I checked, geographic origin is not a slur. If it were, it would be wrong to label people from Mississippi as Southerners. That comes from the LA Times.
So brilliant.
And it's mainly used today by older Asians, just so you know. They're the ones who still use the term Oriental more than any other example. This is another example of social justice warriors just criminalizing a term that many members of a group, by the way, are perfectly fine with in the first place. And it may turn out that their language policing really only affects Asian Americans who run self-described Oriental restaurants, trading companies, things like that.
I mean, these Shylocks who took advantage of these women and men while overseas.
I stopped in Singapore to meet with a guy named Lee Kuan Yew, who most foreign policy experts around the world say is the wisest man in the Orient.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Shylocks probably shouldn't have said, and he had no. Orient, but he wasn't wrong on Orient, but we had to include it, yeah.
Some bonus trivia on that, BP?
Yeah.
It was the same day that he said those two things.
Same day.
The more you know.
Which probably brings us to our next one, a term which is funny. You'll say, well, aren't we allowed to say this? Because no, it's reversed. Colored people. But now it's just people of color. See it confused. But colored. Really? Colored is a term that was outlawed for a long time. The NAACP, to me, is hysterical. Still one of the biggest activist organizations in the black community. That's the name. So according to James Williams, an NAACP spokesperson, by the way, Rachel Dolezal, was NAACP.
Yeah. They had a lot of pamphlets.
Really, she had a lot of color.
Too expensive to redo.
Yeah.
Wrote, times change and terms change. Racial designations go through phases. At one time, Negro was accepted. At an earlier time, colored, and so on. Colored people was not offensive. It became black Americans, and now we want to say people of color. This is the reason this matters is because there is a war on words, and we'll get to I'll bring this back around at the end. People are trying to control language rather than address the ideological problems with racism. Another term, Chinaman. This is one. A lot of people think that's race. So Chinese American historians have remarked that the term Chinaman actually it originated when census takers, they were unable to gather information, and this is what they used. They said, should not be considered racist in intent. It came back from a time when they couldn't. They were like, man from China man.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
I am Ohio man.
And guess who used this to refer to themselves? Yeah. Chinese people, Chinese Americans. For Chinese leader Norman Asing described himself as a Chinaman, a Republican, and a lover of free institution. In his 1852 letter to the governor of California. Are you going to let someone who's an ass determine what is racist? You know, I'm afraid that at some point we won't be able to use the term Mexican. Because that Mexican there don't speak no English and took our jobs. I'm like, oh, you're saying it in a way that's kind of a pejorative. I hear Mexican now. I'm like, oh, geez, I hope there are no Mexicans around.
It almost means
George Orwell. He wrote it this. He was started editing out Chinaman for Chinese in the new editions of his books. And this is how silly that we've become.
Oh, my gosh.
Terms Englishman, Frenchman, Irishman are not considered racist, but Chinaman is? I don't know. I don't get it. Okay, Negro. Negro is the next one. Now, I know I just wanted to just, boom. There's the cold water. The word Negro, we think it's so offensive. And I got in trouble when I was saying it. I said it in a car once, and there was a black kid in the car. And I remember I said it. We were carpooling. I said it specifically because I thought it was less offensive than black. Yeah. And the reason was because I'm French, and anyway, Latin, the Romance languages that come from French. The word Negro, it's simply derived from the Latin word black. It was very common until the end of the 60s, right? And what's the term in German?
It's very similar. It's also a Roman language, so the German term beep is, and I can only say this because I have a durag on.
Yeah.
It's nega.
Yeah, you can't say that with a durag on, but I want you to say it again to make sure I heard that.
It's nega.
Yeah, how's that spelled?
Neger, and we had a candy.
Oh my God.
You had a candy?
We had a candy called Negakus, which translates to Negro kiss, and that was outlawed. But I still grew up on that.
It was outlawed?
Well, they just changed it for, I guess.
What's it called now?
It's now called Schokoschaumkuss.
What does that mean?
Chocolate foam kiss.
You just call all of them chocolate people.
That's
better.
The 9 black people in Germany are like, we remember what you said. Social reformers, the abolitionists, use the term Negro to describe themselves. Frederick Douglass is an example. Slade even put, at least until 1966, it was mainly used by African Americans. That's the point. Negro is a perfect example of this. It was never designed. Yeah. The N-word, right? Sven, you better watch out. The N-word was designed to be derogatory. Okay, that's what people need to understand. And you'll notice a trend with all of these words. And the reason we put this out there is that you're no longer afraid of losing words. You're no longer afraid of words being weaponized. You shouldn't go out to someone who says, I really don't like being called Negro, that offends me, and go, Negro, Negro, Negro. That's not the point of this. The point is, the trend is today's PC term for a group of people, it becomes tomorrow's racist term. And that's because the strategy that the left has, it's the same thing with transgender, LGBTQAIP. It's the same thing with socialism to democratic socialism. It's their strategy of changing words rather than dealing with the ideology or the information behind them. Their goal is to police language, period. That is the end goal. Their goal is to label certain terms racist so they can label more and more people racist bigots, precisely so they don't have to address the points. Remember when we said that someone said, you're committing, for example, if someone were to say, oh man, nice shiner, to a black guy, because he had gotten into a fight and had a black eye, and he were to say, what did you say? Are you calling me a shiner? I wouldn't apologize.
I wouldn't think he would do that. I think he would be like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry about too. And then some white lady would come up and be like,
right.
You should be
You should blue-haired feminists would be like, what?
You committed violence against him.
Because I read a HuffPo article once.
By misfinishing him.
He's totally mad. Can't you see that?
Seriously. Now, if someone were to say to me, like, what did you mean by that? That's a perfect example of someone trying to weaponize, or they know what I meant by it. I meant black eye. Just like when you say, oh gosh, well, if you get mad, you say, you're at, let's say, Burger King. And I don't know, they happen to have black staff, but they get your order wrong 3 times. You go, what is it here at this Burger King? What is it with you people? They go, what do you mean you people? I go, I have no tolerance for that. I don't apologize. Now, if I said something insensitive, if I deliberately used a racial slur or told a joke that was off color and went too far, you say, listen, I'm sorry. Or if it's a friend whose feelings I don't want to hurt, even though I don't think I was wrong, of course I will. But the point is, you cannot allow the left to take control and weaponize words. The reason for this, the reason for the ever-expanding lexicon of words that you can't say, which are often more accurate and were created by these ethnic groups themselves, is because they want to be able to label more people racist, homophobic, sexist, bigoted, transphobic, intersex phobic, take your pick, phobic or wrist. At the end of the day, and they can't do that through the information. They can't do that through factual information. They can't do it through the history of the terminology we've gone through. They just have to do it by saying, don't say that word. If you say it, we're going to destroy your career. And then way over here, there's Michael Richards. Kind of had that one coming. We've turned the tables on Al Gore and used the internet to our advantage. If you like this video, subscribe by hitting the subscribe button or the notification bell next to it, because subscribing isn't enough. Watch one of these other videos. And, listen, you can stick around. You don't have to. But here's the thing. The fact that you're still listening to me saying stick around, as I say stick around and you're sticking around, we just added another ad. You just made me 4 more cents.